Off we go. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to Pernille. Is that right?
Yes, Pernille. Yeah.
Great. Happy to have you here in our channel.
Thank you.
Like we joked just a while ago that we met this week twice, and it's such a treat and joy as well. So yeah, let me just say a few things before we start our chat, our interview conversation. Yeah, the impulse to invite you, to write you and invite you was came because here and there in the forum in Liberation Unleashed, I start hearing your name or the channel name, the name of the YouTube channel is the Awakening Curriculum. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to link it also. So those of you who are watching us to be able to find the channel, there is a lot of good stuff there, guys. And yeah, an impulse arise here to write you and invite you, which people who are watching know that I mean, all the time I received questions why I stopped making interviews. And that's true. I stopped making those. But you froze. Okay, you're here. For a while I stopped because the energy like didn't flow in that direction. And as if now maybe I have some kind of an answer. I'm not sure if I have an answer, but at least it seemed that there is no interest to speak only about this initial shift when the main belief that there is someone separate dropped. Because as far as I can see, 3 years now, while from that shift happened here, there is a lot of stuff going on, and there is a deepening, apparent deepening and embodiment. So I have the sense that what I wanted to discuss or explore or reflect with people is what happened after the initial shift. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So how life goes, like how things flow, what are the changes, what changed, what not, and things like that. So warm welcome to you with this brief introduction. And yeah, tell me something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some kind of a story, probably. Yeah.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that I completely get what you're talking about, and I completely get that need or urge or whatever you call it to talk about, the next step, because talking about through self, it's interesting until you have seen through self. After that, it's more, and it's also why I find all the groups like Vince's group on Sunday, I find them so useful, because in the group you have the people that haven't seen through self yet, and you have the people that have seen through self, and it's like that that beacon that shows that yes, of course, life just continues. It's not like you wake up one morning and it's rainbow and unicorns and that is what is on for the rest of your life. There's like an owning the experience, and in that the deepening comes. I usually use the example of that you have a house, and the front door is the seeing through self. But as soon as you have seen through self, and there is no one separate here, there's just thought identifying with thought. There's a thinker identifying with thought, but the thinker is a thought itself. So it's just thought identifying with thought, and that is just what we then say that is a separate self. That is me as one, believing one to exist. Once you know that that is not the case, and you open the door, you have this amazing huge house with all these rooms in, with all the different facets of identification that we have that we're not aware of. And that is so much more interesting to talk about. Just like we talked about before we started to recording, that I find it interesting to talk about all those different rooms. And it's also what I'm doing on the channel with the Awakening Curriculum, especially in the first 3 fetters. The first fetter is about identifying with thought, identifying with a separate self. So you identify with thought and believe the thought to be important and believe the thought to be true. Once you know that, hang on, that's just a thought. There's no connection between a thought and a sensory experience. For example, those two are not connected at all, but we tend to believe that before we see through self. The second fetter is about doubt. And that is exactly the same, but the identifying with feeling or emotion, where I have a feeling of anger, so I believe I am angry. The fetter work, you look through that, hang on, the feeling of anger that is arising, there's no one to be angry. And if I just stay with the direct experience, so I kind of like, I have this feeling of in me, you know, the sensory in the body, I have like in me. If I detach the thought of anger, I am angry at Luchana because she, all that. If I detach that and just sit with the sensory experience of how it feels to be in a body full of anger, that anger, first of all, there's no connection between the thought about me being angry at Luchana and the sensory experience in the body. There's no connection between the two. I need to latch onto the thought all the time, keep being angry at you. Because if I just sit with the sensory experience of how it feels to be in a body that has, you know, that, and I can't even put the label of anger on it because that is a thought, but having that in me, if I just sit with it and go like, okay, I feel something here, I feel something doing something here, then within a few seconds, it completely evaporates and it moves around in the body. So there's no longer any towards Luciana anymore. That can only happen if I keep latching on to the thought over and over and over and over. And that is the second fetter, where we realize that, okay, there's no identifying with any feeling or any emotions at all. I want to say that in that, I work a lot with trauma. The curriculum about doubt, it's a curriculum that you're supposed to go back to whenever you realize that you have a mood or you have a reaction, because both a mood and a reaction is identifying. You cannot have any reaction about anything without an identifying in it, and it's worth looking into. Normally when we have a reaction or when we have a mood, it's because there's an underlying belief that we believe to be true. And that underlying belief is what I call an emotional indicator, that we have, when we have a feeling of fear, anger, guilt, or shame, that is an underlying emotion that is just lying there and being like that underlying belief of that fear, anger, guilt, and shame can be true and can actually occur. But neither anger, guilt, and shame is true, and it can't occur. It can only occur in a thought, and it can only occur with an identifying with the fear, anger, guilt, and shame. And that's why in the second curriculum, in the second fetter about doubt, I'm really looking into that to tease out and finding out where the identifying with that actually is. And then if you then go deeper into it and you find out that, there's an underlying identifying with anger, then that becomes the starting point. And then I have a description of the person that is so deeply identifying with anger that it becomes a starting point in every single interaction, either if it's thought or if it's a mental picture or if it's a communication or assumptions about what is happening in the world. Then we have a starting point where anger is the foundation of it. That's the toxic starting point of what I call the aggressive bully. And there's a curriculum, there's a full lesson for you to look into that, and looking into the underlying conditioning that you have from very, very early age, where you have identified as someone that could only survive if I protect myself, if I am alert and aware of threats coming from out there. I need to be alert, aware, otherwise I will die. When we're taught that in our conditioning from a very, very early age, we get that, what I call toxic starting point, as the aggressive bully. And then there's another starting point where you have like an underlying belief of you doing something wrong all the time. You're always doing something wrong. You have that feeling of guilt or not doing things good enough. So, for example, as a child, when you have um, a normal basic need of hugs or food, or you're tired or you're thirsty, or anything that is like a normal basic need, and you didn't have healthy adults around you, you had dysfunctional adults around you, so you were taught that you were in the way. Oh, you again, we talked about you should have eaten earlier, and then you feel shame and you feel guilt about not having that basic need. So you know that, okay, it's not safe for me to ask to have my needs met.
Yeah.
So what I do instead is that I manipulate people into meeting my needs, so I don't have to ask for it. I don't have to ask you to come and give me a hug when I need a hug. Instead, I'm gonna pout and I'm so stressed, and oh, Luchana, I don't feel well, and I don't know what I should do. And then you are inclined to come and go, I want to give you a hug. That means that I'm getting what I want without asking for what I actually need. And that is the passive aggressive bully that I call the person. So that underlying belief that I'm not entitled to have the needs that I actually have. And then in the lesson, you learn how to own that space and meet the needs that you have. And the last type that you have is the person that I call the chameleon, that has very early on learned that that whatever need I have, who I am as a person, is not relevant or worthy. I need to figure out what you need, so you will like me. So I'm all the time, I'm out here seeing what other people need, making sure that everybody are happy, that if the person that can only sit down and have a proper meal when you have had a glass of water and you have enough on your plate, and you have and so we project our own needs into other people and make sure that everybody out there are happy. And then when everybody's happy, then I can have my needs met. But obviously that never happens. That never ever happens.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and that's what I call the chameleon. And those are like when we have a toxic starting point, that's when we have grown up in a dysfunctional family and we haven't had the basic needs met. We need to do that before we can completely see through self. Because otherwise, when we see through self, we realize that, okay, there's no separate self. Then we spiritual bypass it and go, which means I don't have a need. I don't need to meet the needs. It's just anger arising. There's nothing like if I was the aggressive bully, you say something and I rip your head off because I'm angry. And then I go, but there's no me that's angry. I'm not really angry. It just arose in me. And now I'm not angry anymore, which means, you don't need to, be sad or anything about it, because there's no me that was angry. It just happened and now it's gone and there's no need to talk about it. Obviously, that is super toxic. And I will just keep projecting my story and my underlying belief about anger, and that being my protection mechanism, into everybody that I surround myself with. And that's why I put a lot of emphasis on that we need to own it before we can release it. You need to own all your shit before you can let go of it. And that's why it's very important for us to be the parent that we didn't have. You need to be your protective father and your loving mother, and you need to make sure that you have a very clear sense of self, that you know who you are. You know who you are, you know what you like and what you dislike, before you can let go of that and no longer be in an identifying with it, which means that there's no longer any preference with me liking or disliking anything. It's just what is arising. So there's no me that has a preference anymore. You need to have a very, very clear picture of self-care. I call that self-care for the non-self. That you need to make sure you go to the dentist, that you go to the doctor when you need it, that you have financial security, that you have intellectual stimulation, that you eat proper food that is not you or harming other beings or harming the planet, that you get rest and mental stimulation, that you get proper sleep, that you get exercise, that you get your emotional needs met. All that you need to take care of, but you need to take care of it in a manner where, first of all, you know that this body is rested after 8 hours sleep. Okay, I need to go to bed at that time, and so I can wake up at that time and be fully rested. And then you can do it without identifying, but you need to own it first. You need to make sure that you take care of that first, and then you can release the identifying with it. So if it wasn't met when you were a child, if you didn't go to the dentist or you were never taken to the doctor, you need to create a routine where that is taken care of, and then you can release the identifying with it. Wow. And it's the same with boundaries. It's the same with boundaries, that you need to be absolutely sure, I am here, you are there, because then I don't need, whenever you cross my boundary, I don't need to rip your head off. I can just say no. If you say, could you come and help me move? I can just say, no, I actually don't want to do that. And if you get angry, I'm fine with you getting angry. If you get sad, I'm fine with you getting sad. And there's no identifying with it. But if I haven't got a clear picture about my boundary, I cannot live it. And that means that I will either all the time react because somebody's crossing my boundary, or I will not react, which means that I'm like, a carpet anybody can walk on. And neither of those are good. You need to be in the middle way, where you have a very, very clear sense of how you can protect and be in the world that is not causing any harm to you and not causing any harm to other people. Which also means that if you ask me, do you want to help me move? I can look into a body yes or a body no, because we have a very, very clear biochemical picture of yes, or which is an expansion, or a contraction, which is no. And that physical reaction is beyond any opinion or identification or preference or anything. It's completely beyond that. And that is what you go into when you no longer need to put your boundaries down and put your foot down and tell people, no, I don't want to do that. When you have a very clear connection with the physical being, you also have a very clear body yes, body no, which means that the boundaries are self-evident. It's not my boundary anymore. It's just, a physical yes or physical no to whatever you're asking me to do. The next thing that we need to look into is self-worth. And I talk about self-worth because we believe that self-worth is a thing. It's not. If you have what we call like low self-worth or low self-esteem, it's about an underlying belief of shame. Yeah. You're frozen. I don't know if I'm frozen too.
Just a second. Give me a second to switch the connection again. Give me 1 second. I hope it won't be. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how it is now. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Good. Yeah, I think now it's better. Now it's better.
Good.
You start painting a very clear picture, and something came here. But shall I ask add-on question now, or shall I wait for you to finish that?
If I just finish what I call the 5 care areas, because then you can actually into that. Yeah.
Okay.
So the fourth one is the one about self-worth and self-esteem, that you hear. I mean, you can take so many courses getting better self-esteem and self-worth. You can't, because it's not a thing. It's a mind-created concept that we have self-worth or self-esteem. However, if I have an underlying belief about shame, that I am not worth loving, or I'm shameful in the being that I am, then I project that into everybody and into everything that creates a life where I feel low self-worth and low self-esteem. So when we work with self-worth and self-esteem, it's more about looking into the underlying belief about shame, the emotional indicator of shame. And the last one is self-love, that you need to love yourself. You need to protect this physical meat suit that you have. You need to be able to love and have unconditional love for this in order to have unconditional love for that. And in that, you can dissolve the sixth fetter, which is about the subject object, that there's no difference. There's no difference between this here and that there, because there is no separation between this here and that there. That is another mind-created construct. So in order for us to really de-identify with everything, we need to make sure that all the traumas that we have when we were children is met, and that we take care and protect of what is here. And then we can unhook all the identification that we have to all of it, and just be in that space where there's just pure being. And I think that is one of the things that is the most controversial when I talk with people about non-duality. It's
absolutely, I absolutely confirm that it is so controversial.
Yeah, true, it's so controversial, and that to me is so bizarre, because if anything I say triggers you, well, sweetheart, look into that. How can you be triggered by what I say? You know, that's something, because you have an identification with something about the truth and about reality, and that is being poked at when I say something else, you know. And then what I normally say is that, well, it sounds like you should look into fetter 2 or fetter 4 or fetter 5, because all of the fetters, I just want to say that as well. All the fetters are it's just concepts. It's just a construct that we use to look into all the different rooms in the huge house, so you can de-identify with anything. And also, like we talked about before we started to record, that you need to be into every single house. So you can say to me, oh, Pernille, you're so arrogant. And I'm not hurt by that. I can be like, because a lot of people, when they're told you're so arrogant, they start to defend. But I'm not arrogant. I'm not arrogant at all. I love everybody. I'm not arrogant. I accept everybody. So they start to defend it. But if you were not arrogant, then you would not be hurt or affected by anybody calling you that. It's just like if somebody says to you, well, you are 8 feet tall, you just go like, oh, okay, because you're not. So it's like there's no point in defending anything, because you're not. But you can only be okay with that. So when people say, oh, you're so arrogant, you go like, yeah, I am. You want to hear a story about that? I'm so bloody arrogant, because you are and you're not at the same time, and those two kind of like dissolves one another. So you can be in the room where about arrogance, you turn the light on, you can see everything, you can be with it, and there's no attachment to anything.
Wow. Yeah. So a few things I would like to add. Let me just see what will be the first one to add and ask as well, to share and ask. So what I start to become clear step by step, little by little, is that trauma is in the way of dropping the belief in the self. I mean, it's not, almost is not possible if there is a lot of trauma going on. And, and also I start noticing how people are drawn to that, with this expectation that seeing through the self or seeing through separation is going to dissolve once and for all what's being there. I mean, so there was no self from the beginning. There never was a self. There were just like patterns and beliefs and ideas which were formulating or accumulating this idea of a center in order for us to survive. I mean, to survive, really. So when people are coming with that idea, well, it's so obvious. I mean, what do you expect? So what do you expect?
I think it's also,
I'm so grateful that
I think it's also really, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful that we reflect on that at the moment.
Because two things I want to say. The first thing is that we need to remember that as children, when we are younger than like 3 years old, we don't have the idea of a separate self. We don't have that idea. So if you go to like, if you are like, I don't know what you call that, nursery, and one baby starts to cry, all the babies start to cry, because they feel this, they feel the feeling, and they have no discernment that I'm not the one crying, I'm not the one hurting, so they will start to cry because all the other cries. Then when we're about 3 years old and we come to kindergarten, we realize that I can sit in the sandbox and I can hit you in the head with a plastic shovel and you start to cry and I don't. That's when we realize that there is a separate. From then on and until we are about 18, 19, we are shaping that persona, and that persona needs to own everything in the house. That's why I'm using that picture of the house. We need to own everything, and we need to be met with unconditional love in order for us to show unconditional love. We need to be met with unconditional acceptance so we can show unconditional acceptance. But if we haven't experienced that as a child, we don't know how it is. Which means that there was the trauma that happened when we were a child. Let's say you were hit in the head with a plastic shovel in the sandbox, and you realize that the world is an unsafe place to be. You need an adult to hug you and to hold you and to kiss you until you feel safe. And when you then realize that, okay, the world is unsafe, but I am safe in myself, and I am safe with another being, and I am safe in here, then we can go out in the world and be safe, be that little bubble of safety in an unsafe world. If that has not happened, that needs to happen now. And that's why it is so important for us to look into trauma, because there's a little part of us that has not been met with unconditional acceptance, love, and compassion. And that needs to be met now. So you don't need to remember the trauma, and you don't need to go through 17 years of therapy to point fingers at mom and dad, because that is just the concepts, that's just a construct. The thing that actually needs to be done is you need to get in contact with that feeling that is fearful, that has anger, that has guilt, and that has shame. And then you let that grow in you, and then you meet that with unconditional acceptance, love, and compassion, which means that you don't want the feeling of shame to go away, because that would be you as a child pushing the child away. You allow the feeling of shame to be here, and you say, what I suggest people do is that when you get that feeling of shame, somebody says something and you feel so shameful, great, stay there. Don't say anything, don't do anything, close your eyes, breathe. Can you be in a body that is full of shame? Can you be right here, right now, where you feel full of shame, and you allow it to be, and you make it grow and grow and grow and grow until the entire world that you experience is full of shame, full of shame. Be there. Can you be in a body that feels that? And then you detach the thought of shame from the physical sensation in your direct experience. How does your body feel right now? Breathe. How does your breathing feel? How does the stomach feel? Is there any clenching teeth? Is there any kind of contracting sensation? Don't put any label on it and say, my stomach is contracting. That is a thought. Disconnect that. Just feel a contraction happening here. Breathe into it. Can you be in a body where there is a contraction here? And you just breathe into it and breathe into it. And then just by allowing to be in a body full of shame is dissolving the shame, because it doesn't exist. It's a thought. It's a thought about shame. It's a recognition in you that is happening to a hurt that happened decades ago that wasn't met with love, compassion, and acceptance. So the only thing you need to do now is just to feel it. You just need to feel it. And so you don't need to do anything about a feeling. You just need to feel the feeling, allow the space, and it will dissolve. And then you're back on the non-duality horse, where you feel that, okay, there is no I, because there was no shame to begin with. But if you have a wound in you, you need to heal it. You can't spiritual bypass it. You can't just gaslight it and expect everything to be fine. You need to own it first. And by that, you will heal, and then you will see through all of it. But it needs to be owned first. Yes.
Definitely. Definitely, Leah. I just start realizing how difficult it is for some folks I met and speak in video and even in writing in the forum. It is so difficult to see through that. I mean, it's almost unshakable. Like this is like a China wall. It
Yes.
can't. It's just impossible when there is so much going on there from trauma and
Yes,
yeah,
but it's understandable, because if I
for sure.
have if I have an underlying belief of the world being unsafe, you know, if I
Mhm.
have been raised in a family that was abusive, where mom and dad was alcoholics, or were just, you know, dysfunctional in any way, and I very, very early on was taught that the world is unsafe, I need to protect me, then that is what is my reality in my bubble of reality. So no matter what you say to me, the inner side of my bubble of reality would be with a starting point that the world is unsafe. So if you ask me, are you okay? In my bubble of reality, I would hear that as you accusing me of something, because the world is unsafe. So I will only hear that you got something against me. So I would say, what do you mean by that? What do you mean, am
Exactly.
I okay? Don't I
Yeah.
look okay? What do you mean by that? Or if you smile at me, you know, because my inner bubble of my reality says that the world is unsafe, I know that that smile means that you have done something that I haven't found out what you have done against me yet, but I will find out. So I
But
will go like, what are you laughing about? What are you laughing about?
I've heard those
Yes,
sentences. Yeah, I've heard those
yes,
from people here and there. Why are you
yes,
laughing like that? I mean, what is this
yes.
laughter?
Because
Oh my goodness.
and the
Mm,
thing is that it's only because that in my starting point, in my underlying belief about the world, I am unsafe and I need to protect me at all costs. So if you're smiling at me, there's something that you have done against me that I haven't figured out yet. So I'm going to attack you. I'm going to beat the truth out of you until you tell me what you have done against me. So I won't, be caught, or I won't be attacked. So I'm going to
mm,
attack you first and find out what it is you have done.
mm.
You know, that person needs so much hugs, so many kisses, so much compassion, so much love, to learn that, oh my goodness, sweetheart, I'm not against you in any way. Yes, you are. You only say that because you're trying to manipulate you. You know,
Mm,
you're trying to manipulate me. You're trying to do something that I haven't found out yet, you know? And if we have a starting point like that, we need to own that. We need to own that, because it's only I who believe the world is like that. That is identification. And I
yeah.
need to look into that identification with my underlying belief that the world is unsafe. If you, sitting and listening to this, believe that the world is unsafe, you need to look into that delusion, because the world is not. If you believe that the world is not unsafe, well, sweetheart, you need to look into that, because the world is. There's not an either or. Nothing is that black and white. There's a middle way between everything, because the world is both unsafe and safe at the same time. And you need to be in that space
Mm.
where that pure being, and that's what we started to talk about. It's more interesting to talk about that. you
Yeah,
know
for
that
sure.
in that space of the pure being, where nothing is missing, nothing needs to happen, your life, how your life is right now, is the best as it is ever going to be. You are at the top, you are at the peak of your life. It's never gonna get any better. If you in your mind have a thought like, oh shit, I hope it is, look
Mm,
into that. What is it that you expect is going to be better than what is right now? The moment can't have anything else but what is right now. And if you believe that it should get any better, then first of all, you're delusional, because you believe in time. You believe that there is a future. You believe that there is a past that has happened that you can move from into something better. That's completely delusional. The moment in itself is just the moment. There's nothing else in that. And there's no one in the moment. It's just that expressing and unfolding in the moment that is there.
mm. Beautiful. Beautiful. Something came now. I think I came across one comment, and I think it was on our video. I mean, the video that you did with me. the interview.
Yes, yeah,
And
yeah.
a friend there, I don't know this friend, but I feel like people watching as friends. I don't know.
We're all
This is
friends. Yes.
yeah, we are all friends. And he said something about that.
Yeah, about the twirling. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I was so amazed by your response. And I would like to ask you now something about that. Can you expand on that? Because I also came across a video with Angelo, you and Angelo, and I think the title of the video is Autism and Awakening. Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but
Yes.
I don't have, like, for now I couldn't manage to watch that. I just have it saved on my playlist. I don't know when it's going to, like, it will happen sooner or later. So can you say something more about that? Because I'm curious. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are curious about that. And also I have two friends which I'm speaking there. They are on the spectrum somewhere.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
And,
sure. I mean,
and one is totally like this belief is no more there. And the belief in, like, there is someone separate suffering or whatever. And the other one is like in somewhere in between.
yeah, yeah, I can just start to talk, and then
Is it
then
possible?
you can. Yeah,
Let
yeah, sure.
let
Okay,
let me the
sure.
question be, is it possible? So these two, autism and awakening.
Yes. Yeah, the first thing I want to say is for anybody that has made it this far in the interview, you have realized that I'm speaking very, very loud and I'm speaking very, very quick. And a lot of my of the way that I talk is different than how other people talk. You'll notice that I'm sitting and rocking. You'll notice that I'm not looking directly at the screen. I'm looking everywhere else. I'm twirling my hair. And yes, I'm autistic. I'm Asperger's. Being autistic, then I also want to say that I had a really nice conversation with Angelo. I love Angelo dearly. And he made an interview with me where we talk about autism and awakening. And on my channel, I'm also interviewing different autistic people about their, being an autistic Buddhist and being, in that community where you are like a square peg in a round hole, because we do not fit in with the normal neurotypical way of viewing the world. Our brains work
Work
differently.
differently. Yeah.
Yeah. Then I always get the question, but if you don't believe in a separate self, then how can you say that you're autistic? Because how can you say that there's no separate self? How can that non-separate self be autistic? And I completely get the question. Obviously, I do. The thing is that with the thing that makes a person autistic is how the neural pathways are. And in a brain of an autistic person, the neural pathways are shorter, which means that our thinking and our processing happens much, much quicker than it does in a neurotypical brain. So we're not talking about a person being here. We're talking about a meat suit being here. And in this meat suit here, the neural pathways are shorter, which means that the perception of sound and smell and visions and taste and touch is completely different. I can smell diseases. I can smell emotions. And where a neurotypical person will say, you can't smell an emotion. Well, I can. I can smell it. I can smell if a person is pregnant. I can smell if you're diabetic. I can smell if you need statins, needs to go to the doctor because your cholesterol is off. I can hear things that other people can't hear, that you need to be closer before you can hear it. And that is not an I doing that. It is just the way that the brain is processing the sensory experiences. I had the other day, I had something really, really poking in my sock. So I took off my sock and I couldn't see what it was. So I had Todd looking at my sock and he was like, oh, it's a hair. So I had a hair where it felt like something sharp was cutting into my foot, and it was a hair in my sock. So it's not that there's an I that feels that. It's just that this physical meat suit, the neural pathways and the sensory experiences that I have, with the neurons going over in the pathway and getting to the receptors, and that message going to the brain that is then processing what is happening, that is happening quicker. I was in an accident a lot of years ago. Before the accident, I had eidetic memory, which means that when I read a book, I remembered everything in the book. I remember my first memory, I'm about 3 months old, and then I remember everything from
Wow.
then. That's also when I told you, I've been in Bulgaria when I was 5. I remember being in
Wow.
Bulgaria as a
Wow.
5-year-old. But it's not and me and I that does that. It's just that in this meat suit, that is how processing happens. I read a book a day. I speak 6 different languages. It's not a me that does that. It's just in this meat suit, those things happen very, very easily. Then there are other things that doesn't happen. There are other things that I can't do. Things that for neurotypical people is completely normal. For example, I'm really, really bad at small talk. I'm really bad at understanding. For example, if you want this interview to end and you start to do different things, but you're not saying directly that we need to wrap this up now,
Mhm, mhm.
I won't pick up on that. I won't pick up on that. You need to tell me, okay, 5 minutes left, and I know how much 5 minutes is. I know how much I can talk in 5 minutes, and I will start to wrap up. So there are a lot of things that this meat suit, this physical meat suit can't do that a neurotypical person can.
Mm.
So I don't see it as a separate me that is autistic. I just see a meat suit with a neural pathway that is in a certain way that we call autism.
Mm. So, like, I don't know what to say. I'm just my admiration. Like I'm thrilled by what you just shared. And so, for all the people who are listening and watching this, and people who have some kind of issue with that or somewhere on the spectrum of that, yeah, there is a way, guys.
Yeah, and a funny thing, which is a fun fact for everybody on the spectrum, not so fun fact for everybody that's neurotypical. That just want to say, when you work with the fellow work, I call my channel is called the non-duality, and the curriculum that I do is the awakening curriculum, and the subtitle of it is an Asperger's way of awakening, because it's the way that I see the world is different. And what I have found is that for a lot of people on the spectrum, a lot of autists, now I just say autism instead,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people with autism, the first 5 fetters are very, very difficult to work with. Where for neurotypical people, the first 5 fetters are very easy to work with. They're easy for neurotypical people because seeing through self is easy. Looking into doubt and all the identifying with thought and with feelings and emotions is easy. Looking into the different rites and rituals that you have, it's easy. That you get a coffee in the morning, you can look into that and just let go of that and then not do it anymore. You taking another route to work, you can do that. Not meditating with a purpose, you can do that. So that is very easy. The desire and ill will, all the things you want, all the things you don't want, that is those 5 things are fairly very easy to work with. So for neurotypical people, they usually go through the first 5 fetters quite quickly.
Mm.
And then you come to subject object. Then you come to the part where there is an I and there's something outside of me, and this looking into that is just a construct. That is not real. There is no I, there's no one here, there's nothing out there. That is just completely blurred. Practicing to see the world in 2D, so you have like width and height and you don't have depth, that's really, really difficult for a neurotypical brain. And the same with the last of the higher fetters. However, for an autistic person, we struggle mostly with the lower 5s, because
Mm.
the higher 5s, we have memories where we lived in the higher 5s.
Mm.
All of us has been conditioned to learn to mask, to learn to be in a world where we do see ourselves as separated from an animal. A lot of autistic people are vegan because it makes no sense in us to kill anyone. And if that anyone has 2 legs or a beak, or is called Fred, it makes no sense for us to kill any other being. So a lot of autists are usually no, a lot of autists are vegan right off the get-go because it makes no sense to kill anyone or to harm anyone. A lot of autists can talk with animals and has that connection with animals as if, like neurotypical people, they have with other human beings, autistic people have with animals, or objects. An autistic person can be as attached to a teddy bear as a neurotypical person can be to a pet. So for autistic people, the higher fives is how we remembered our lives before we were conditioned and taught to be shameful for who we are. And that's why the lower fives are so difficult to get through, because I need to own and be in a world where all the shame that I was conditioned to believe that I'm too much, that I shouldn't be who I am, that I shouldn't remember past lives, that I shouldn't talk the way I, talk with anyone as if they're a friend. I need to be careful. You can't trust anyone. All of that conditioning, all that masking. You can't twirl your hair. You need to stand still. You can't interrupt. You need to look me in the eye. No, you need to wear those shoes. You can't wear flip-flops in the winter. You can't wear soft clothes. You need to wear a bra. All of those things that we are conditioned and shamed for being who we are is what we're working with in the lower fives. And for an autistic person, that is completely pulling the rug of everything that I believe who I am. When I speak with other autistic people about awakening, what they usually say is that they have their entire lives felt as a poorly functioning neurotypical person. As soon as they embrace being autistic, they know that they are a perfectly functioning autistic person, because we view the world differently. We see the world differently. We interact in the world differently. We are in the world differently. And with the feathers, with the lower feathers, we learn that who we are is completely as you're supposed to be, because that is who you are. There's no questioning what is anymore. So working with the lower fives for an autistic person takes longer, but we waltz through the higher fives. It happens like that because we remember a full life before shaming and before doubting that that's how it is. And that's why also when you speak with autistic people, that a lot of them, they go like, but the world is 2D. I was taught it was 3D.
Yeah,
I was taught
I've heard
that
that
it was
so many times.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's also why I enjoy working and creating the feather work, because it is available equally to neurotypical people as it is to autistic people. And it's also why I'm putting so much emphasis in the lower fives as I am, so autistic people, they have a chance to reach that autistic awakening.
So it's possible for everyone. Of course it
Yes.
is.
Yes.
This is our birthright.
Yes.
It's not only for some special ones, chosen ones.
No. And it's also why I love Angelo's book, Awakening. It's your turn, or awaken, or something like that. It's your turn. Look up Angelo DeLulo. He's lovely.
Yeah. Wow. Such a joy sitting here and reflecting these beautiful words. I mean, I also can share that I feel your words. As if I feel those words. I'm not hearing those, as if I feel, but it was not like that here. It was not like that.
No, I know, but the thing is, and this is one of the things that I realized in my awakening, that I have lived a full life masking, trying to fit in to be somebody that I wasn't, trying not to twirl my hair, trying not to rock, trying to be normal, to be, not interrupt and not speak too loud and not speak too quick and all of that. I've my entire life tried to fit into a box that I didn't fit in. Then I realized, that I was autistic. Then there was a lot of processing around that. And then I ended at a point where I looked at the world and go like, oh my God, it's not only autistic people that are masking. Everybody are masking.
Exactly.
All of us are living,
Totally.
all of us are trying to fit into that bloody box that nobody fits in. Nobody fits into the box. All of us are taught to fit into a box that nobody fits in. So instead of looking at and owning who I am, We look at our body and go, my body is too fat, I need to lose weight. And then we focus on that instead of saying, oh my, I'm wonderful as I am. You know, the meat suit that I have is the meat suit that I have, and it's serving me, and I love my meat suit, and I can touch every part of my meat suit, and it's just wonderful, you know. But we're conditioned by society to look at us being wrong in some way, that you can't have wrinkles when you're old. I've had so many people saying, I don't want to grow old. I'm like, what the fuck? You want to die young? Of course you want to grow old. I mean, growing old is a
Yeah.
privilege, you know? So it's like, is that looking into that conditioning by society that we should be different, that we should have a certain size, we shouldn't have wrinkles, we shouldn't be in a certain way, you shouldn't cry if you're a man, you shouldn't talk about your feelings and emotions. So men, they'd rather kill themselves than, you know, talking about that they feel horrendous, you know. And nobody fits into that box. That's the whole point. Nobody fits into it. It's not only autistic people that don't fit it, neurotypical
No,
people
not
don't
at
fit it
all.
either. And
Not
that's
at
why,
all.
exactly, and that's why realizing all the traumas that we have, that we, the only thing we need to do is just creating space to that, to really knowing that there is no fear, there is no anger, there is no guilt, and there is no shame. Who would you be in a world if you were exactly like you're supposed to be? Because that you are, you know, you are exactly like you're supposed to be. So who would you be if you didn't have any shame? Who would you be if you didn't have any guilt? If you move through life without any kind of fear, who would you be? And that is who you actually are. If you feel lots of guilt, if you feel lots of shame, if you feel lots of fear, that is conditioning. Look into that, because it's just a delusion. It's just a delusion. But you need to look into it with lots of compassion, lots of love, and a lot of acceptance.
Yeah.
Do not look into it for it to go away. You don't want it to go away. You want to own it. You want to experience it. It's a huge opportunity to grow.
Yeah, it's a delusion, and in a way, it moves this through life.
Yes.
Like the conditioning moves us. We move like that through life if we are
Yeah,
not curious about what's happening there, why I
exactly.
react, why I got angry, why I feel shame, whatever. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can say very very easily like, yeah, whatever, just feelings coming and going. Yeah, we are free to say that, of course, but
Yeah,
also we are free to move freely in life.
yeah,
As
yeah,
life.
and also the thing that's so important, that when we are gaslighting ourselves and saying, oh, it just happened, you know, it was just a feeling come up,
Yeah.
it just happened. When we do that, there's a part of us that is crying, that is alone, that
Mm.
feels isolated, that we do not want to be with. And what I'm saying, then you're identifying with that, you know. Why don't you just create space to whatever is? Why don't you just love your anger burst? Love it, and look into, why do I think that I need to attack Luchana? She's wonderful. Why do I rip her head off? She's wonderful. What is it in me that feel the need to protect myself from her? She's wonderful. And then I just create space instead of looking into it because I don't want to be angry.
Mm.
I look into it because I want to hug and kiss and love every single part of me. That's why I look into my anger, not for it to go away, because I don't want it to go away. I have no need for it to go away. I have a need to meet myself with love, compassion, and acceptance, and then be with whatever is, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah, when you say anger, and yeah, around 3 years after the initial shift, when the belief in the self dropped, there was this insight realization that, oh my goodness, there is so much suppressed anger here, so much that
Yes,
literally this anger was showing up during the night, like in the dream.
yes,
I
yes,
was killing, beating, and
yes,
doing awful things.
yes,
It
yes.
it was showing up.
Yeah, and I really think it's, and I want to emphasize that I think that as women we're conditioned to not feeling anger. It's okay for us to feel sadness, but
Oh,
not anger, not anger.
no
You can
problem here
cry.
with sadness. With
Yeah,
sadness, no
exactly.
problem.
Yeah, and for men it's the other way around. they are allowed to feel anger but not feeling sadness. And it's like, why? Why? It makes no sense. So
Yeah,
women
totally.
need to look into the anger so they can be in a world where being angry is okay, and other people being angry is okay. Because when we're taught that we're not allowed to be angry, I struggle with other people being angry. Just like when men are taught not to feel sad, they struggle with other people feeling sad. It's not that and that's the whole point, that if I struggle with anything, I need to look into the parts of me that I do not accept are exactly like that.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. I was very angry. I won't say angry, but judgmental with the people
Yes.
who were freely expressing anger.
Yeah.
I couldn't bear that. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
That's awful. Shame on you.
Yeah.
Shame on you. Look, look, look.
Yeah. Exactly. And
Suppress
and
this
and
anger. Suppress this anger exactly like I am suppressing mine.
exactly,
Don't show
exactly.
it.
And
Don't
that's
show
the
it.
whole that's the whole thing. In the fourth and the fifth petal, when I get to that in the curriculum, I talk about verbal indicators, and that is blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining. Whenever we do one of those, we are diverting from a feeling inside that we don't want, that I'm projecting onto you so we can talk about you because I don't want to look at me. So whenever I'm blaming, shaming, complaining, or explaining, I'm diverting my attention from what actually needs my awareness and my attention and my
Attention,
love and
exactly.
compassion and my acceptance, and I put it over on you, and then we can talk about that. You need to stop being so angry,
Or
said
so
the
or so
gentle one.
smiley, or so smiley, or so polite, or so
Yes.
sad, or so whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to check the time. So, Pernilla, we have few minutes more.
Okay.
I'm just I'm just
Thank
announcing.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank
this
you.
this time passes so quickly. I'm amazed. We are here almost an hour. We definitely need to do a second part. If you are
Yeah. Sure.
up for that,
Sure.
I would love to.
Yes, absolutely. And then people can ask, questions underneath the video here. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I come back, you can ask
Yes.
me the questions and I
Yeah.
can answer.
Or also we can do a live.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Mm, good. Yeah, yeah. We can do
Yeah.
certain different things.
I would like to talk more about that controversial part of non-duality that makes what I'm talking about when I talk about, you know, fear and guilt and shame and trauma and all of that. When I talk about that, um, it's so controversial to talk about in the non-duality and the radical non-duality
Yeah,
community.
yeah. Radical non-duality just dismiss that. This doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's yeah. If anybody has any questions about that, then I would love to talk about more about that, because it's yeah, I see that I really see the danger of spiritual bypassing and gaslighting yourself by saying there is no I. Yes, I was raped as a child and beaten up my entire childhood, but there is no I, so it doesn't really matter. I
Mm,
mean, that's gaslighting. That is toxic positivity. That is, yeah, there's parts of you that needs to look into that needs to own the hurt and the pain, and then you can let go of it. But you can't, it's not something that you let go of, it's something that dissolves by itself, and then it's not an issue anymore. But you need, and then I also want to say to everybody, non-duality, radical non-duality people that still are listening to this, thank you and well done. Then I also want to say, remember how it was to be you before you saw through self.
mm,
That is the compassion that you need to evoke for people that hasn't seen through self yet. That if they need to ask questions, then allow them to ask the questions, because you were a seeker once.
mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have a feeling that I don't know if that's true. It's just a feeling here in my experience that when there is an initial shift, like a first glimpse or first like this falling of this belief of the separate self, and people are drawn to that type of speaking, and
Hmm.
they just stay there, and that's it.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
it, which is fine, which is ultimately speaking is absolutely okay. But for those who have like experiencing who are experiencing a lot of shame, anger, guilt, a lot of doubting, a lot of meing and being, a lot of back and forth. This is why this is happening, not because there is a self. There never was a self to begin with. This is happening because there is unresolved stuff. This is
Yes.
why it feels like the self has back, or the self is here, or there is identifying. Of course, there is no self to identify with, but there are things which are
There are things that
things.
still needs your compassion and love, and you need to find out what those things are so you can love them unconditionally. And then the need for them to be seen all the time will dissolve itself. But you need to see them first.
Mm.
You need to meet it and love it, and not wanting it to go away, but just allowing it to be there, because you spent a full life wanting it to go away.
Yeah.
It's not until you embrace it and you love it and you accept it and you have no need for it to do anything and just allow it to be there, then the need will dissolve itself. But as long as there is a need, it's like when you're thirsty, you cannot spiritual bypass yourself out of thirst. You need a glass of water, sweetheart. Go and get some water. And it's the same thing when you have an identification that keeps coming up. Please allow it to be there. Allow it to be there, and then you meet the need and it will dissolve itself. Just like when you have a glass of water, you're not thirsty anymore. It has dissolved itself.
Yeah.
But it needs to be met.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. And it needs to be met here. I mean,
Yeah.
inward, not out there.
Yeah. And a last thing I just want to say that I spent a lot, like the better part of almost 2 decades in therapy, talking about childhood and talking about what happened and being told that, well, they did it as good as they could and all of that. And I just want to say to anybody that looks at your childhood and say that they did it as good as they could. Do you realize how much you are spiritual bypassing, how much you're gaslighting yourself? Because there's a little child that is sitting and has experienced a hurt, and that is not being met. That's why we keep going back to therapy over and over and over, because the feeling of hurt is still there. You need to meet it. You need to have somebody who can say, that was utter shit. I'm so sorry that you experienced that, and not anything else. Don't add any kind of forced understanding for what they did and all of that. Stop it. Stop it. Just stay with the hurt. Own that you're hurt. Own that it did. Yes, it did happen. Yes, it did happen. Own that. Own that, because nobody else are. No, everybody wants you to divert from it and look away from it. Look at it. Look at it. Keep looking at it and keep meeting that pain and kissing that child over and over and over until the hurt dissolves itself. And you can be in a body that had those experiences. You can be in a world where that is a part of what happened. Then you don't need to divert your attention from it all anymore, because it's okay. But if you keep looking at it and diverting your attention and gaslighting yourself and telling you that, but they did it as good as they could, the hurt is still there. And who cares about them? Who cares about why they did as they did and why they weren't there and all of that? Who cares? The only thing you need to look at is the pain and the hurt that you have in you. Do not want it to go away. Stay with it. Stay with it. Like it, nobody was ever there and staying with it. You need to stay with it now. And just allow it to be there. Allow to be in a world where the pain is. Allow to be in a body where the pain is. It's okay. It's okay.
Beautiful.
And then it will dissolve itself.
Beautiful. This is a lovely end of our conversation. Yeah, I will link the website and also the YouTube channel below the video.
Yes,
and
thank you.
yeah, we will definitely make another one. So guys, if you are watching that and find it useful, helpful, or insightful, or maybe triggering, I don't know, yeah, comment and let us know, and we will do a second part, maybe live.
Yes,
with the questions.
I would love that.
I'm going
I
to
would love that.
stop the recording.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Pernille.
much. And thank you to everybody listening. I'm so happy that you stayed this long.
So do I. Much love.